positive mental health. This week's session is all about being supportive. Many of us struggle regardless if it's an illness or not, and we want to make sure we are being supportive and caring friends. You will learn about warning flags and signs that someone is struggling, be able to notice those signs when you see it in others, and then be given some tips as to how to help connect them with someone for more help. Even if you don't know someone currently struggling with mental health concerns, you will know somebody in your lifetime, so this information is key to have regardless. I'm going to hand it over to our guest speaker now, which some of you may already know. Jessica Schumacher works for the Canadian Mental Health Association, specifically with youth engagement and education. She is also the coordinator of the YouthTALK program I mentioned earlier that I am a part of. Jessica has taken training for mental health and suicide prevention and is also a Safe Talk and Ask trainer herself. Thanks for being here and talking to the youth.
Perfect. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me here to be able to speak with you today. So first off, I do want to start with a question, and anyone can write this in the chat if you know the answer, or just shout out any answer. What percent of the population has mental health? Anybody, what do you think? And for those of you who are listening to the recording, I will say them out loud. Oh, we have an answer right away, and it says 100%. And yes, that is true. So 100% of the population has mental health. Just like if you have a body, you have physical health. If you have a brain, you have mental health. And that's the way that we need to be talking about it. But we do know that there are some people who will experience a mental illness. It is very different, but they do go hand in hand, and we need to make sure that we are discussing it that way. So as Kristen had said earlier, we're all going to be affected by mental illness in some way. And whether it's today or later on in our lives, someone we know or someone we love in the community will have a mental illness. So we need to make sure that we are being non-judgmental, very inclusive, and not being mean or using harmful language to others, because we don't know who's around that we might be offending. Because mental illness does not discriminate. There's no set reason, time, or place, or when someone will develop an illness. So right now, I'm just going to share my screen with you because it illustrates mental health and mental illness just a little bit better. And hopefully you can all see this slide that has just popped up right now. So it just goes to show our two continuums to make our mental health quadrant, and really just emphasizing the fact that there are people who can be in a place of wellness and not have an illness, but also be in a place of distress and not have an illness either. Just like someone who could be diagnosed or showing signs and symptoms of a mental illness, but maybe have not gone to the doctor yet to get that official diagnosis, they can end up in a place of distress and have an illness. On the other hand, too, we also have people, and actually the majority of people with mental illnesses will be in this top left-hand quadrant. And that's someone who has an illness, but is doing really well and is in a place of wellness and functioning just as well as someone who doesn't have an illness. We need to make sure that we know that anybody can be anywhere on these scales. Wellness to distress continuum is very fluid. It's constantly changing. We know that illness to no illness is a lot harder to move back and forth on, but we also know that people can end up in this place of wellness and recover from illnesses such as anxiety and depression. So we are moving along this continuum, and we're going to be changing where we are, but making sure that we are acknowledging that there are people that have illnesses and they may not be struggling in the moment. Just like with physical health, if you had asthma, you can't really be cured of it, so you always have an illness, but you can be doing fine in a place of recovery. So just a little slide here to kind of emphasize that it also isn't always stable, right? So we don't know where we could be or what happens to us that could end us in a place of distress. Just making sure that whatever side we're on, illness or no illness, if we are feeling distress, very overwhelmed, that we can't cope for a long period of time, then to make sure that we're reaching out and talking to someone. Okay, so I've stopped sharing my screen now. And we'll get onto some of the information as well. So supportive friends can play a very important role in the mental health recovery process. All too often, people respond negatively or dismissively when someone discloses that they may have a disorder or a mental health concern. And it's really important to remember that they're just as real, as I said before, as physical illnesses. And we wouldn't dismiss those when our friend told us something. We wouldn't tell them to just snap out of it. And if we are really unsure how to react, that's okay. Think about how you would react if you were sharing something to your friend, or if your friend was sharing something about a physical illness to you, right? Making sure that we are being open, non-judgmental, that we're there to listen to them, and that we are there caring about them too. So we want to make sure that we are able to be in this place where we can support them and have a conversation, but also know that throughout this talk series, we're also going to mention things that, okay, if we aren't comfortable, or if we need to set our own boundaries and can't be that person to have that conversation with them at this time, what else can we do? So we know that we want to talk a little bit about the signs of someone who may be struggling, and that could be struggling in anything, any part of their life. It doesn't have to be only due to a mental illness, but we do know that if someone is struggling for a very long period of time for anything that's been going on, it could lead to an illness at some point as well. So we know that trying to tell the difference between what expected behaviors are and what might be the signs of a mental illness are very difficult. And sometimes it's just not easy. And they're just not out there saying, oh, good, this is it. This is a sign. I can see this. And then I know, right? Especially during this time right now where there is confusion, the pandemic's going on, and there's just so much irregularity in general that we're experiencing. There's no easy way to tell if someone has an illness or not. And we can't make these assumptions. We do need to make sure that we are waiting for them to be open and honest with us, but also picking up on signs that maybe they're just struggling in general. We also don't know if this could be regular type of behavior that the person may be experiencing due to physical illness, due to other stressors, due to this pandemic, because we know that there's a difference between being sad and being depressed, or liking things clean and then someone saying, I have OCD, right? So each illness has its own symptoms, which is a whole other topic on its own that we could chat about. But we do know that there are common signs of mental illnesses that teens can be showing signs of. And these include talking about wanting to die or threatening suicide, even if you think that they may be joking, or even if they say, oh, I'm just doing this as a joke. It's not a joke, and you want to take every time someone says that very seriously and reach out or get them some help anyways. Showing changes in their behavior. And this is something that's not regular, right? So, hey, you know what? We know that something happened, or they didn't do so well on a test, or they just broke up with a partner and they're spending 3 days to a week sad. They're crying all the time. They're in their room. They're listening to the heartbreak music. However, they're doing whatever they're doing to cope. That's okay too. It's just making sure that we know that this isn't out of the norm, right? Because we also don't know the grieving process, or when someone is experiencing like extreme bouts of sadness, or if they lost someone, that could be a lengthier period of time as well. Or we can also go to someone that says, you spent 3 days straight in your room playing video games. Oh my gosh, you're withdrawing. That means there's something going on. You're not participating, that you must have a mental illness. When they're saying, nope, I'm just an introvert. I like spending this time. I really enjoy video games. I'm trying to beat a level, so it's taking me all my time and energy, right? We need to make sure that we're seeing the changes, right? Those mood swings, right? Kind of like that roller coaster, those ups and downs, things that aren't regular to what we'd normally be seeing. Seeing a change in appearance, people who are caring less about taking care of themselves or their daily hygiene. Noticing eating, sleeping, or exercise patterns. And again, that could be doing it excessively and overeating, or sleeping all the time, or working out 4 times a day, or the opposite. If they were someone who did eat healthy or did exercise daily, and now they've just stopped doing it all. They're not sleeping at all. They're not even maybe eating, kind of noticing those behaviors, because that is also like a type of self-harm if someone isn't providing themselves with what they need, right? So also someone being very angry, so their temper, right? Maybe they're picking fights, throwing things, just being really irritable and lashing out at some people, especially some people that maybe they would never have done before. And you're like picking up on this saying, wow, you know what? That's kind of out of the norm. And it's not just, oh, I got mad once and I slammed that door, right? It's got to be a little bit of a continuous behavior. There's some other signs that we might notice about engaging in risky or unhelpful or harmful behavior. So we did mention self-harm, any sort of self-harm that we can notice about someone. Maybe getting into drugs or alcohol abuse or misuse, or even just trying new things that they just normally wouldn't have, or that wasn't really who they were before. So kind of changing their actions that way. Maybe excessive shopping or online, maybe they're gambling, speeding, maybe they're drinking and driving, just things that are risky behaviors and very not helpful, and they can be harmful to a person as well. And then with the withdrawal and isolation, we did talk about, is really big. So lack of participation, just loss of interest in things that they normally would be involved in as well. Appearing really sad or depressed, as we said, and having those feelings for that like a longer period of time if there wasn't already a situation that happened. And even hearing what they're saying, like using keywords like, what's the point? Or I won't be around and long enough to do this. Oh, I've got it all figured out. Don't worry about me. Nobody cares anyways. This sucks, that kind of stuff. And then even poor performance in school or academics or any extracurriculars, not showing up, not caring so much about that. So there was a lot, right? And we just mentioned a bunch of different signs and symptoms. And you might think, okay, you know what? This is too overwhelming. I can't remember them all. A really good key piece of information to remember about noticing signs in someone are 4 things. So what do we pick up on from a friend or someone else that's an acquaintance or in the community? Things that we see, hear, sense, and learn about from a person that may kind of put you a little bit on ease or like a little bit worried, or saying, you know what, this could be a sign, like I think you might be struggling, right? And it doesn't have to be with mental illness. It could be just struggling about things in general. But we know that, again, if you leave regular things that you're struggling with and all those daily stressors that are in your life, that could then lead to an illness. So we want to make sure that we are noticing it early and getting support for people. So things that we had mentioned, right? All those things up top that I already had said can also be in these categories. So things like see. You see someone being really careless, right, with their hygiene. You see them withdrawing. You see them engaging in these behaviors. You see them maybe giving away possessions. You see their attitude changing, their temper, that kind of stuff, right? But again, putting it into relation of the person. Hear. So those things that you actually hear them say. They are alone, or they don't want to be alone anymore. They have no one else to go to. They don't want to be a burden. There might be no purpose for them. This sucks. Nothing's going to get better for me. Things are the worst right now. And then if they are making jokes about wanting to be dead, again, that's not a joke. We don't take that as a joke at all. Everything has to be very serious. Maybe the things that you sense about is also that gut reaction. So if you're like, I don't really know if this is a sign, but you know, I have a feeling that something's off, something's not right. They might be struggling. They haven't really told me anything, but I just feel it. That is the sense, right? And that is a good thing to go by, because a lot of it is your intuition and those gut feelings. But you can also get a sense of feelings of hopelessness, or of maybe being numb. Maybe you sense that they're ashamed or they're desperate. Maybe you just sense that they're hiding something, that maybe they don't want to talk about it. You might sense their anger, their pain, their emotions, even their frustration or guilt, right? We can sense these things by how we interact with people. And then also the things that we learn about from that person, right? So what in their course of their life, what in their past, or what is going on for them right now that might say, yeah, you know what, I can see why you might be struggling, because these things have gone on. So maybe there's abuse of any kind, rejection, loss, right? So maybe loss of finances, loss of family. Maybe there's the conflict in the family and there was a divorce. Maybe there's death of a family member, friend, a pet, right? Someone maybe even that they related to in their community or in certain movies and TV shows, celebrities. Maybe there's been bullying, or there's been a failure in their life, which we don't actually like to say there's a failure, but maybe they did not succeed in something, or they went out for something and didn't get what they wanted. That can cause some people a lot of stress. Family conflict, physical illness, mental illness as well, if we already know that there could be a history. Big transitions and changes that go on in people's lives, maybe moving as well, jobs, school stress and issues, a lot of these things too, right? And again, with that little piece of loss, maybe it's also a whole new time where they're just figuring out who they are. Maybe there's a loss of identity, or maybe just discovering a sense of self for themselves. So these are the things that we want to kind of keep in mind for our symptoms or our signs, and noticing maybe when someone's struggling, the things that we see, hear, sense, and learn about from a person that could lead to having a notion that, yeah, you know what, something's going on. There's a lot of stuff happening that might be a little bit bigger than just what we would say like a regular stressor of everyday life is. The biggest thing that we can do is being aware of it, noticing these things, and not being afraid to do something about it. And we know that sometimes, yeah, you know what, you are going to be really afraid, or, uh-oh, I've noticed this and I don't know what to do next. And this is really big and I'm worried for them. And as a friend, or even a concerned acquaintance, someone that you're noticing, we don't want anyone to be struggling. We don't want anyone to be going through anything serious. So we are generally caring people and want to see people get the best and get all the help that they need. So if we do notice this, we can keep it simple, right? There are some things that might be a little bit more in depth that you think, oh, that's not for me. But then there's some things like, I can do that, right? This is how I can help someone. So we want to make sure that we're just being there for that person, being a friend. What would you want in this situation, right? That golden rule, treat others the way you would also want to be treated, and trying to do that. Don't panic or show that you're shocked or your fear, or that, oh my gosh, this is huge and I'm so worried and I don't know what to do, because then they'll pick up on that and then they'll say, well, you know what, they're really, afraid of it, then I'm not going to open up or talk about it. Don't walk away from a person if they are reaching out and talking to you about something. Instead, ask them what you can do to help, because you don't know, right? You're not counselors, you're not therapists, you don't have the qualifications, you can't fix or solve. Instead, you can say, okay, what can I do to help? What do you need right now in this situation? And don't assume you know what they need. Like, oh, I know this one person and this happened to them, so this is what you're going to do and I promise it's going to get better, right? We can't make those promises, and we also don't know, because every person and situation is different. Focusing on what's strong in a person rather than what's wrong. We do know that we're all going to be distressed. We're all going to have things that go on in our lives that aren't great. But what are these awesome positive things, right? And that's how you can kind of share that little piece of hopefulness for them. Like, yeah, things aren't great now, but look at all the things that you do have. And that's not being dismissive and saying, oh, well, you're fine, don't worry about it, life's going to get better. Not kind of using that language either. You can share how you're feeling, to relate, not to take over and say, oh, yeah, this happened to me. Oh, do you want to hear this 20-minute story about myself? But making sure that they know that they're not alone. You can even share your feelings of how happy you are that they came to you and that they were opening up, that you're proud of them, that they reached out to talk to you. We want to build people up in a positive way, right? Not getting too involved in toxic relationships or heated discussions and opinions, especially online, and just being more positive in general, because when we are more positive, then that's going to spread and people won't be so worried or anxious to reach out to someone when there are more positive people surrounding them. And that just really means being a good friend and a good person. So that also means watching your language, right? And we don't have to be super close to people and say that they're their best friends in order to be able to help or be kind, right? Because we could notice this in anyone. We're just making sure that, again, in general, we're being mindful, we're being positive, encouraging people and wanting people to get the best help that they need. So we do hear of the stories also with a nice, kind stranger. And then people are like, wow, you know what? It wasn't my best friend. It wasn't my mom or dad. It was this one random thing that someone said to me. And I'm going to remember that. It's going to stick with me. And that's what helped me and wanted me to reach out. So I do have a chart at the end that's about language and just kind of being mindful about what we're saying to people and what are good options that we could use instead. For time's sake, I do want to keep going on because there's a lot of content in this particular topic. So next, we want to make sure that if we're picking up on these signs, we want to ask our friend. We want to reach out and say, okay, what can I do for you? Doesn't have to be elaborate, and you don't need to mention mental health at all, but just reach out to simply see if they're doing okay, right? But be straightforward and not jumping around the topic. If you're wrong and it isn't about mental health, that's the best case scenario. But there is something else that's going on. They might be struggling with something else, so they can still get the help that they need, right? And it won't make you look stupid. It'll show that you care, you're paying attention enough to reach out and see how they're doing. Okay, I'm just gonna pause right now. So 4 minutes left on this recording, which means we only had about 30 minutes. I'm gonna pause right here because I do have a lot more information that is very helpful for this topic. Is there another way that we could create a new Zoom link and then just send that out to the participants who registered, Wendy? Okay, it says that you can hop off and then hop back on. Yeah, we could rejoin, and maybe I'm not sure if we can restart the recording again, but we do know that, Wendy, in order to have a new recording, could we do a whole new link, or will the recording start again?
I'll record the second half.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll just finish off with our asking, right? And we don't need to say then, hey, do you have a mental illness, right? We don't need to be that straightforward either. But how would you talk to anybody, right? How would you start that conversation? Hey, what's up? How are you doing? Make sure to include some things that you picked up on that you've noticed. Hey, like I've noticed that you stopped coming to class, or you know what, you haven't answered my last 4 texts in a row. Like, what's up? What's going on? Is there something going on? Do you want to talk about it? Just regular conversation that you would have with a friend too, right? And that also leaves the door open for them to know that you picked up on these, and they can't just shut you down with a, nope, I'm fine, nothing's wrong. You're like, I noticed this though, so what's the deal with that? Like, what's up with that, right? They might say, yeah, I'm fine, don't worry about it. And then you don't want to seem like you're prying, so you might just stop the conversation there. But if you're asking questions that are open-ended, then they really can't get away from not answering you. And then we'll stop there, because when we do come back, we'll talk about the fact that you asked and they're going to listen. And now we can then know how to actively listen and how we can hear what they have to say. So we'll stop there. I'll let Wendy, you take over if you want to cancel it, and then the rest of us can rejoin. Some of you, if you can't rejoin, that's okay. We're going to record it and we will post it again. So we'll see you guys again in a couple of minutes.